I'm almost 50, strong, clear, energized. Training hard, living clean, fully alive. But it didn't start here. 30 years ago, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and I felt hopeless. But I chose a different path. No meds, just science, discipline, and results. Now I'm symptom-free and asking the tough questions that move us all forward. This is Hope and Health. Let's go. Hello and welcome to the Hope and Health podcast. Today, I'm talking to Sanjay Parmar, who is a senior solutions engineer and a mindset coach. Diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 2007, Sanjay is thriving and going to share his story today. Sanjay, thank you so much for joining us.
You're most welcome, Matt. It's always a pleasure to speak with you.
All right, let's get right into it. How are you doing today?
Today, honestly, Matt, similar to how we talked a few years ago, still doing amazing. In fact, muscle-wise, I'm getting stronger by the day. I think it's awesome.
Wow. So for people who don't know, Sanjay and I met, it feels like almost 10 years ago. Is that true? Is it that long ago?
Yeah, it was probably at your premiere of Living Proof at TIFF.
Okay.
That's where we met in person for, I think, the first time, right?
Yes. And you've been, just like me, you shared your story publicly for a long time now, trying to help others. So,
Definitely.
So let's go right back to the beginning. Let's go back to 2007. If you could share with us what happened. How did you get your diagnosis?
So how I got my diagnosis was I was a new dad at that time. I think my son was about 4 or 5 months old at the time. I was working from home. And that week, I remember walking around and I just felt like my leg kept almost like a Charlie horse, like it would collapse a little bit. And I didn't think anything of it. I just thought, being in sales, I was busy. I was just overworked probably. And I remember that day on the Friday going up the stairs to change his diaper, and I remember buckling on the stairs where literally like my one side just kind of gave up. And thankfully with my other knee, I pinned my son up against the railing to kind of hold him there. But at that point, and that's when I realized, something out of the ordinary has just happened to me. And of course, fear kicks in and panic. And at that point, I got my mother-in-law to ultimately come to the house, take care of my son. And then I was whisked off to the hospital. And then from that point on, I was still kind of walking as I was going to the ambulance. But I think just the sheer kind of stress and anxiety as to what's going on, it started to shut off certain areas of myself. And I found myself then dragging, part of my body as I'm going through the hospital a little bit. So then after multiple tests and, doctors making every single assumption under the sun, saying I had a stroke, saying I had a seizure, saying, so many things. And at that point, I just told them, look, if you don't have like something with data to be backed up to sell, don't tell me anything because you're just really stressing me out right now, right? And finally, one of the doctors decided to give me an MRI. From there, we saw I had about 9 lesions in my brain, a lot of them being on the right side, which ultimately knocked out the left. And from that point on, that became something that I had to basically understand that this is what reality is for me now.
When they finally do give you the diagnosis of multiple sclerosis, what did you think? Did you know lots about it before? Were you familiar with the disease? Like what was the shock like for you?
So to be honest, Matt, the shock wasn't there because I didn't even know what multiple sclerosis was, aside from hearing, MS, but never looked into it, never wondered what it was about. But then after doing that research, then I was like, oh, I'm in something here. Like this is something pretty major, and this could, and of course, we always go to the negative, right? So it's like, oh my God, like what's life going to be like for me now? Like, how am I going to get better? And you have a billion thoughts going through your head, right?
Okay, now I'm going to stop you there because you said something and you kind of glossed over it really quick. You said after the research. So what does that mean? Did you have to go research by yourself? Were you educated at the hospital with what you had and what this meant for you? Like what made you go start your own research?
Well, I've always been a data guy. Being a solution engineer, we always base our thoughts or our strategy based on data, right? So again, like everyone does, they go to the web, and I got like a booklet about MS from the doctor's office, but again, it was nothing like that informational. And so then I started to do my own research, but I think that's when I started to go down certain rabbit holes, and that's when, honestly, my symptoms started to increase because I believe in the full mind-body connection, right? So when I started reading about all these different symptoms that I could potentially get now from having MS, guess what happened within the next 48 hours? I turned a lot of them on. And that's when, my friends and everyone were just like, you know what, Sanjay, shut that computer off for now. Just like focus in the moment and just deal with kind of what you're dealing with. Stop reading extra and stop amplifying it.
Now, you're a solutions engineer, so I'm going to assume that solutions are a big part of your life and how you approach reality. So what solutions were you given in the hospital? What was your first, when you met with a doctor, what kind of prognosis were you given, and what solutions did they give you?
To be honest, Matt, I wasn't very impressed with that whole experience that I had in the hospital because, again, testing and or therapy or whatever they were going to put me in was literally months away. And I said to myself, right now, my leg isn't working. How is that going to get better if I'm waiting a month to get like into treatment and of course, right away, I got this long list of, drugs that I potentially should start to take. And then I went ahead and researched those drugs, saw the side effects with them. And I said, if you were a salesperson, like, you're not selling me whatsoever. Like, I'm not about to sign up for putting all of this into my body without you telling me that, this is not going to cure anything, but this might help you to manage things. So then that's when I decided to kind of take health into my own hands to a certain extent.
So if we could back that up, so you're given a pamphlet about the disease, you're given a menu of drugs that you can choose from that could potentially help your long-term progression with the illness. What kind of education did you get at that point? Like, listening to your story, it's like seems like you're always researching. You're going back and you're going after it yourself. Were you not given enough information? Were you guided to do additional research? What kind of was the spark of that for you to keep going?
So I think the spark, Matt, honestly, was that I didn't align with the diagnosis and I didn't align with the prognosis of what future could look like for me. I didn't want to believe it because I just knew that this wasn't what I was supposed to be doing on this earth. This is not how I was supposed to end up. So that's what kind of led me to doing my own due diligence as well.
So you get in there, you start researching the disease, you start researching some of the pharmacological options you were given. What's the decision? How do you come to that decision for like, how am I going to proceed with what I'm going to do with strategies to hopefully slow this disease down?
So at that point, Matt, I literally told the hospital, the doctors, that I'm not interested in any of these drugs and that I'm going to go. I was already working with a naturopath prior to that. And I just said, I'm going to have a discussion with her. And that's when we started to go into, again, that's when I discovered your best bet diet and also following more of an anti-inflammatory protocol with respect to how I was living my life. And lo and behold, even every doctor said, this is not going to work. Nothing's been tested. Nothing's been proven. Well, you know what? I'm 18 years in and I'll tell you what works in terms of my body.
So you make that decision. Do you have to go back to the doctor? You shared with your doctor that you're going to go a different way?
I did. And obviously he was upset and really forcing me hard to take some sort of drugs. And literally, Matt, I fired him then at that point in time. Wow. And I haven't had a family doctor since. I've only worked with those in like naturopaths, osteopaths, and kind of in that world.
That can be a really challenging conversation with patients to have to their doctor to stand up to those types of things. I've talked to many people who really struggle. They get accused of, going to Dr. Google. We hear this kind of thing. There can be a lot of doctors can be really threatened when you bring in research, when you start talking the data, which I just know you and I assume that's the kind of guy you are. What would your advice be to patients to navigate that conversation when they want to take their health in a different way with their own choices?
First and foremost, you're going to get roadblocks every which way when you've decided to do something out of the norm, right? That's like with any decision in life. Every time it's against what everyone else is supposed to think or is made to think, it's always like, oh no, you can't do that. You're gonna be sick, or you're gonna get worse, right? But you have to, I think, whatever you decide to do with it, you have to believe that this is going to work for you. Honestly, my mindset is what healed me or helped to, get me back to normal. Having that connection and just really saying that this is the route I'm going all in. If I don't, then, I'll talk to them about it. But at that point, I wasn't about to sign up for, a multitude of side effects for which you have to take additional medication to combat those. Like it just sounded like way too much toxicity that my liver would have to process.
Now, this is obviously something that you're really, passionate about. You speak out on these types of things. You drive it.
Right.
Did you have that right from the beginning? Did you know right away that the way you thought was going to be so important?
Not at all, to be honest. And I realized in my case, it was my mind that was broken, my mind that was running, whether it's programs from previous generations or just going into the negative versus being on the positive side. And I realized at that point in time that there was a lot of more fixing other than my body that I had to take care of. I had to, kind of start to believe in certain things I was about to embark on. And at the very beginning, I wasn't at that point, and I was in a very negative spot. I was, even had thoughts of taking my life at that point in time, because you're just like, how can I operate with, one hat? Obviously, I know differently now, but at that time, you're just in so much fear that, how can I operate from, having a disability, or not even, how many years do I have left? And of course, you go and run these crazy patterns that thankfully I don't do a lot anymore.
Okay, now before we get into, you also made other changes. You made radical changes to your diet. You did these types of things, and we're going to get into that. But I'm really interested in this shift in mindset, because in my journey, I see this so often with people who get, and I've experienced it myself. You get stuck in a negative spot, and you do realize that you're not thinking right. How I like to see it is sometimes reality just breaks through. For you, what was that moment that you realized, I got to change the way I think? And then what did you do?
So when I realized that was, again, very, very much so in the beginning, where now my naturopath had given me supplements and kind of a plan. And at that point in time, I believed it, but I didn't quite believe it. So at that point, that's when I think it turned on in my mind to say, okay, you have to go all in on this, at least for the beginning, like commit to it. And so that's when I got into even practicing morning meditations, doing positive affirmations, and really working towards owning my stuff. Because I find in a lot of cases, we like to push our problem off to others instead of dealing with it directly. And when you do actually own it and take care of it yourself, like it does a huge shift within yourself, even down to the cellular level, because you're not holding all this toxic thoughts down to that point, right? And that's, I think, when I started to really start to see results. I started to see that this was working, and that's when I went deeper into neuro-linguistic programming, learning how the way I speak, the way I think affects myself as well as my environment and those around me.
Right. Okay, now I'm going to break this up again. Do you think belief and positive mindset are two different things?
Yes, because you don't always have to have a positive belief. It could be just a belief that it's something that you just have to do, right? But no, I'm huge on positivity. To be honest, that's, I think, my biggest piece of medicine that I'm able to use as much as I need whenever.
And I completely agree. I think positive thoughts and positive speech, positive writing, all of these things are super important. Now, when you started to do this, I'm going to ask you a question first. Do you think that the default mode for human beings is negative thinking?
Yes.
So that's like the default setting for people.
That's how we've been programmed. I don't know why, but yeah, that's how it goes until, again, that word belief, like whether it's belief in your creator, belief in the fact that you're going to get better, like you have to believe in something.
Okay, so we're gonna go on the assumption that all human beings, your default mode is negative. So all of us are going to struggle to push ourselves into a positive way to live, whether that's being positive, again, speech, action, thought. Can we kind of distill it to that? So you wake up. So Sanjay wakes up in the morning. The default mode is the negative. What are you doing to kick yourself out of that right away?
What I'm doing at that point, Matt, is I had to have awareness. So understanding, hey, Sanj, you're going very negative right now. Like, how are you going to get yourself out of this? In the very beginning, I'll be very honest. Sometimes I didn't know what to do, or I didn't have the solution. And I had to have, certain people like kick my butt, get me back on track, right? And that's when I learned that, hey, I have to own my own stuff. I can't be passing it off on others, or I can't be expecting a doctor or a therapist or any type of healer to take care of the situation for me. I need to own it, and I need to go through it.
So radical self-accountability.
100%. And I find that's what this world is missing these days, is folks don't want to own their stuff anymore. They want to just pass the buck. And that's why we're in such a dismay as we see today.
Now, you've been in this journey for a long time. Is this still a daily? Because I know this is still a daily battle for me. Like I have to, that first half hour for me is what you're saying. It's affirmations. It's reminding myself. It's making sure that my first emails of the day, my first text messages are super positive, even when I don't feel it.
Thankfully, with the type of energy I always put out there, people receive it, and those that are receptive to it, you can bring them up as well.
I completely agree. And for me, I find it's the little things. It's not the big things. Right. It's not the big gestures. It's not the, the big, a mindset change for me. It's just the small little things that incrementally get to me to that mindset change. Is that same for you?
Definitely. And kind of the three principles I live by, and this is something I established literally right at the beginning when I started going through my journey, was be a good person, be good to others, and don't expect anything in return. And I've been really working on staying in the now, or the present moment, versus going too far back where you get, grief. Too far forward, you get anxiety. But if we can stay present, just like, Eckhart Tolle always writes about, but I find if we stay in the moment, that's what predicts or models out what our future is going to be, right?
Okay, can you repeat that? That was really good. So what happens in the past? Too far back, grief. To thinking too far forward,
anxiety.
So you have grief on one side, anxiety on the other. And so the key for you is to try to stay in that present moment, making that next positive decision.
Exactly.
I love it, man. That's the way I try to live. Not easy to do.
No, and it takes a lot of work, trust me.
Yes. Now, for me, how I was able to achieve, I'm not going to say that I'm batting 100. I'm not. But I feel like I'm doing pretty good in that space. For me, it was meditation to be able to control my thoughts that kept me out of falling into the past and the pit and the abyss of the future, I call it.
Right.
I call it the abyss of what ifs. And and meditation kept me out of that abyss. Is it the same for you? Would you recommend that for others?
I definitely would, because again, as we both know, MS is something to do with your brain, right? And in a lot of cases, when our brain is kind of up here doing crazy things, we need to ground ourselves, whether that's meditation, whether that's breathing, taking a walk, or just kind of sitting with yourself, right? And I think when I started to do those practices, that's where I started to notice that difference just in my overall calm state of my body versus what it was before, where it was like a simple thing was said and I'd be like, oh, right? And then right away you go into fight or flight mode all the time. And that's where, that's how I got to how I got to, because I just too many times putting my body into shock for, simple things that you probably could have addressed differently and not gone through it.
It's really interesting. You just said something, this is how I got to where I got to. So in that, for me, what I'm hearing is that you were able to look back and see that the choices you were making ultimately led you to the situation you got in.
Right.
Radical self-accountability.
100%, Matt. Because again, nobody put me into this situation. I did, whether that was, my mental state or, probably we weren't eating as good as now we do, right? But I think it's a factor of combinations where, again, I had to be like, okay, I've got myself in this situation now. How do I get out?
So one of those pieces of getting out was changing your diet. So let's go into that. Like, what did you do? How did you decide to do that?
So how I decided was, again, it was something that my naturopath had recommended to follow. She gave me a full printout of the anti-inflammatory foods not to have for a while, just to, again, get my body to regulate properly. And then, again, I used components of Your Best Bet diet as well. And I did that for a solid 2 years. To be very honest, at this point in time, I don't, like, I have steak. I eat certain things that are inflammatory, but I realize what actually brings inflammation to my body. So like alcohol, I don't necessarily drink. Maybe I'll have a cider or two a month, but that's something I've totally cut out. And you know what was interesting I found is when I was speaking to others who had MS, because again, you want to do that when you first get into the clear. And I found that people were like, no, I'm not going to give up drinking, or I'm not going to give up this. And I said, well, then you might be giving, I didn't say it, but I was like, you might be giving up your path to recovery or your path to being better because you're not wanting to.
We were talking about the diet changes you made to have a more anti-inflammatory diet in hopes of controlling your multiple sclerosis. Now, before you made those changes, can you describe what your diet was like?
Yeah, so I would say, to be honest, Matt, not as many vegetables, I think, as I eat now. But and again, going to go get A&W or going to, because you're always on the go in sales, right? Or you're doing business travel, so you're just grabbing something fast like Subway or whatever, not realizing that all that gluten in the bread or everything is kind of, affecting your overall gut health for the most part. And again, it's because we just don't know, right? Like our Canada Food Guide is probably opposite to what we're supposed to be eating, right? So then, when I had to start to eat differently, like even now, like I make that conscious choice. Is this something I want to actually eat, or is there another option for me at this party that I'm at, or if I'm out? And again, it's something that I have to own, so that if I eat a piece of cake and again, I don't feel too much if I don't eat the right way, but certain things I'll feel sluggish again. Then I'll be like, okay, well, this is exactly why, because I had, that burger with the bun on it or whatever, right? And that's where, again, it's comes to self accountability. But no, my diet is definitely a lot cleaner compared to how I was eating prior to the diagnosis.
Now, can we talk about that first week when you decided to change your diet? Like, what did you do? A lot of people have trouble with this. Like that, it's a big shift for a lot of people who've never heard of a dairy-free or a gluten-free diet. Even that can be, really jarring to them. Like, what did you do? What was your day-to-day?
In the beginning, you're still in denial. You're still not accepting that now this is how you have to eat. So that's when I got into starting to get recipes and starting to follow them. And I was like, hey, these actually taste pretty good. So then it kind of gave me kind of the go-ahead to keep doing it, I think, on that end. But overall, in the family at the time, we all ate similarly. So it wasn't like, everyone else had a specific way they're eating and then I was eating differently. Because again, that causes a lot of headaches in people's households, right? Especially when you've got to eat a certain way. They don't want to eat like that. So someone's making, double food all the time.
Now, what foods did you have to walk away from? Like, what do you miss?
So what I missed, well, I don't really miss it anymore because it's been a while, but like leaving alcohol, leaving like garbage, food that you would get outside. Like I don't like McDonald's. Like I haven't had that in like 20 something years and I don't miss it. And so things like that, like, yeah, I don't even look at, in fact, my son is almost 19 years old now and he's never even had McDonald's to this date.
Wow. I get it.
And he's got a clean body, like, because again, he's been brought up that way, right?
Right. So, yeah, no, I find the same. I mean, my kids, it's very, very similar. And, but now my kids are not as old as yours. They're 17 and 15, but now they're starting to recognize what happened. Like they're starting to be able to make those choices by themselves, which is incredible. Right. Like, this whole idea of just leading by example does work.
100%, whether it's your positivity or how you treat others. I mean, that was another thing, honestly, Matt, that I remember as I was going through my journey. I was like, my son is watching how I process this and any difficult situations in life. So if I'm going to throw a pity party or a tantrum every time something bad happens to me, guess what my son's going to model? He's going to do the exact same thing, right? And, even as I've gone through harder things in life, to be honest, what I always tell people is I said, once you've gone through MS, and in my case, had to make an arm and leg work again, I said, nothing you're doing at work or even in relationships is that difficult.
Right. It does give you a pretty radical perspective shift.
It almost like it slaps you in the face, and it's like, do you just sit there and cry about that slap, or are you going to take it and now learn from it?
No, I to be honest, I have had some challenges in my life because of that. Especially if people, in my life are venting to me, and I'm like, hey, you can walk up the stairs. Like, sometimes I can be a bit rough on that side, but it's a balance. So you start this radical new diet. You're trying your best. I think I can suspect at that time to change your mindset. What results do you start seeing? Does your leg get better? Do you start improving?
Yeah. So it was so interesting, Matt, because I was with St. Mike's Hospital, and one of the top neuros in Canada was the one who I was tagged to for my visits. And I didn't go frequently, but every time I would go, and then I would be the only one in that room full of, these kids younger than me in wheelchairs and walkers, and I'm running back and forth down the aisle there. And every time I remember, and this really made me sad when I asked this question, I said, based on how I'm getting better every single time, I was like, do you want to know what I'm doing? Because I see these little kids, or I see these adults, and wouldn't they love to be in this state? And she looked me straight in the face and just said no, because then I understood that by me being able to do this by myself, I'm ultimately breaking their system. They need you to not be well. They need you not to be sick, but to kind of just be right in the middle so that they've got that plan for you, right?
And how do you see that system?
Am I allowed to say like actual words here? Like,
I think speak freely.
I think it's absolutely disgusting that what our system is here. Yes, fine. If I have a bone popping out of my arm, I know that maybe a natural substance or supplement is not going to work for me at that point. But honestly, I don't believe in doctors. Hence why I don't even have one, because I just don't like the way that they've been ingrained to think there's only one way, and if you don't do it this way, then you might be in trouble. And they just don't want to believe like you and I would ask, what if we can do something different, or what if we can try this? There's no what ifs in their world. It's like they're ingrained with this way that they've been taught, and they're continue teaching that way. I think there's a lot of better doctors now, the younger ones, that are appreciating kind of natural health and other options. But it's so funny, because even when you tell people that this is how I'm doing, this is how good I'm doing, and those who have MS, especially those recently diagnosed, it's almost like they throw like so much negativity your way, and they talk down to your success. And I thought to myself, I'm like, well, keep thinking what you're thinking, but nothing you're doing is going to affect me. I'm doing my method, and it's working really well for me. So I don't need to worry about your pity party.
Yeah. And why do you think there is so much negativity in these communities?
I think honestly, Matt, it's because, again, a lot of folks, when they align with their doctors, because again, doctors have the way that they tell people that, you're at your point where this is the danger zone and you have to listen to every single thing I say and do and take these supplements. And I wanted none of that, right? And heaven forbid, we kind of break out of the mold and decide to do something different. I mean, just with anything, right? Like if you started a business or you wanted to take a different endeavor, you're always going to have negative people, because again, maybe they want to do it too, but they're just too fearful to take that step or that approach.
I think we could both agree that the strategies that we're talking about, the nutritional changes, the changes of the mindset, exercise, all of these types of things, a lot of patients aren't hearing this information.
Exactly. Because again, doctors always go back to, oh, it's not proven, or there's no data. And funny thing is, the data that's provided is always from pharma companies. So it's like, it's a sick little cycle that, is out there. And I know kind of what I think about it. I stay somewhat quiet, because then otherwise people will try to silence you. But in my world, I know what works, and I continue knowing what works, and it could work for others as well. And I don't freely go and put my info out there, but if someone's going to ask me, I'll definitely share my story. I've gone on stage, I've done talks, and for those that want to listen, like you might be in a crowd of 100, and that those 2 people that needed to hear what you had to say that day got the message. And that's what I like.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about that. I mean, I've seen the big video that you're in, that you shared your story. What got you there? What was is there a moment that, a moment of frustration, of anger, of inspiration? What took you to that next level to start speaking out?
So what took me there, Matt, was I had to take myself back to 2007 and remember when I was looking for that specific information, it wasn't there. Or when I wanted to learn about other opportunities, it wasn't there for me. And I didn't find any people that were succeeding. Like I found you a couple of years later, right? But all I was seeing on every forum was just bitching and complaining, and just everything was just so negative. And again, it brought me down too. So I said for myself, when I said yes to doing this talk on stage for the first time ever, talking about my, MS. And again, MS doesn't live in my body. I rid myself from that title right from the beginning. I say more success instead of MS, right?
Wow.
And
I like that. Hold on, stop that. MS is more success for you.
Yes.
So that you've just taken the term MS out of your vocabulary, the way we think of it.
100%. And the reason for that, I find, Matt, is with anything, if we're constantly thinking about something or we're accepting this title that someone else has given us, we live in it, we breathe it, we actually grow it, right? And that's what we don't want to do.
Sanjay, let's get into that. Let's get into the narratives that of themselves, of the people around me, that people are convinced of. What can you do to break out and change your story?
In a lot of cases, people just do things because that's how the previous generation did it and their generation before that. I find, for me, I like to understand the why versus just the how, right? And that's I think the big shift that I made in my world, that I can make that decision whether I want to do something or not. You don't have to do that for me.
So listening to your story, I mean, you're living your life. You're obviously, you're an engineer, you're a father. 2007, major diagnosis of multiple sclerosis, changes your world. What I can see so clearly is you used it as a catalyst for change.
100%.
You used it to transform your life.
Right.
What would your advice be to someone who's just diagnosed? How do they get that mindset of like, hey, instead of being told, the outcome of my life is going to be horrendous, maybe this is just an incredible opportunity to change, to have a better life than I did before?
Right. So what I would say, Matt, is that start to be aware of things that are happening to you. And if you're noticing a pattern, it's because something that keeps showing up is something that you haven't addressed or you haven't owned it yet. So in my case, it took me having to get my left side knocked out to wake up and to basically, start to own my situation and kind of things that I was doing, and I had to make that change. So for those newly diagnosed, I think, honestly, there's a statement I made as I first started my journey. It was, without hardship, there's no learning. Usually what I mean by that is when there's a tough situation, we can either take it 2 ways. We can either play the victim that, oh God, this happened to me. Everything sucks right now. Or we can take it as a warrior and be like, you know what? This is what I'm up against right now. I need to get myself back. And it's like the Matrix. You can either take the blue pill or the red pill.
Right.
Either one has its positives, has its repercussions, right? But you have to be willing to align and believe that that's the path you're going to take.
Now let's talk about that wake up, because I like that term. I know it's used a lot in the world today, but I do think it's relevant. I do think that these situations can wake us up. And I
100%.
think one of my messages that I try to share with people, I get contacted a lot, whether it's on the phone or through a Zoom call, is you can do it right now. Like
100%.
You don't have to wait till tomorrow. Like while you and I are looking at each other right now, you can change your life radically right now. You can become a different person if you choose, and go on a different path if you choose. Like right now, you can do it.
100%. Change happens instantly. And the way, I always ask this question to certain folks where I say, because it kind of brings out where they're at mentally. It's, are you upset with the situation you're in today? Or are you upset about how you feel about that situation? Because one talks to the actual situation itself, but then the other is around your ego. You're fighting it because, again, your ego wants you to do something different. And that's the struggle I see with most folks that are, going through whatever they're going through. And I always ask that one question, and it just makes them like silent for like a few seconds. And they're like, yeah, I think it's how I think about it.
Yeah. And for me, I mean, and again, feel free to, push back at me. For me, it's action.
Yeah.
It's action.
Right.
And I think that like in my journey, and action means starting to meditate. Action means paying a bill. Action means sweeping out my kitchen. I find that if I'm in action and I'm doing a positive action, whether that's speaking, writing, whatever it is, that gets my momentum going and takes me to that higher level.
I 100% agree with you, Matt, because again, us simply just being positive and feeling positive, that's not going to propel us forward. We need to now take steps, action to ultimately get there, right? So whatever that plan is, that first step is going to be the hardest step. We know, like with anything we do in life, right? That first interview or that first time you're going to launch your business, just that first movement forward is the toughest one that you're probably fighting nonstop. But until you do it, like even on stage, I had never done that before, right? And I'm standing behind the curtain, a guy who gives thousands of presentations a year, like on Zoom. But this is the first time I had 100 people. I didn't know who they were, and I had sawdust in my mouth. And you know me, I'm very easy to talk to, and I can converse with the best of them, but I had sawdust in my mouth for the first time, and I literally had to take the action to be like, okay, dude, 2 steps out of this this curtain and you're on stage. So it's go time. And everything that I've rehearsed, I forgot every single thing. But when I got out on stage and I saw all these people there, I was just like, okay, at the end of the day, I know my story. I live my story. So my heart is just going to bring out what I'm supposed to say today. And it went beautifully.
Do you think this is your purpose?
I do, Matt, and I'm trying to figure out how can I make this my purpose on a daily basis instead of just, again, here and there.
And when you see that, if this is your purpose, do you find that the universe, reality, however you see it, it gives you opportunities to step into it, to shoulder more responsibility in this MS community? Or is it the mindset community that you're trying to get into? I mean, where do you feel for you, Sanjay, you're falling?
So I would say MS, again, is just one autoimmune disease, right? There's so many other things that we can address through our mindset, like whether it's mental, physical, relationships, job changes. There's so much of that going on right now. I think if anything, it's almost like you got to equip that mental toolbox for, pulling that right tool out when you need it for whatever situation. And so I want to get to the point where I can educate those to empower themselves to be their best self every day, and no matter what they're going through. And it like ignites me when I talk about this.
Do you think that illness starts in the mind?
100%. The way I've been kind of taught about it through various readings and such is that every illness literally starts as a thought. And then what that thought does is starts to embed itself into like cellular level. And then when that thought's not being addressed, basically those cells get stuck. When those cells get stuck, that's where disease starts to form. And then the body in the mind tries to like bring the message out by like whether showing you physical symptoms or things just to get you to like wake up. And in my case, again, I wasn't waking up. And it took like a full knock me down to the ground to wake me, right? But no, I'm 100% on that every illness or disease or anything bad that's happening all started as a thought.
Now, you've been in the community for a long time now. What do you see the state of the MS world right now for people with multiple sclerosis? Like, what do you see happening? Has there been change, or is it simply the ecosystem has remained the same, and it's these voices that you and I have that are still trying their best to speak out? Or do you see a momentum shift?
I see a small shift, but not as large as I would want to see it, because again, you still have like walks and, when I looked into the funding on walks and I saw where dollars were going, and then I saw sponsors that were on these walks who are promoting inflammatory foods, it's like, how is that working? right? So it's like, I don't see a positive kind of progression, because again, they almost need you to be sick, and they don't need you to be fully sick, too far gone. They need you in the middle, right? So that way they can do what they've got to do with their medications and their visits and all of that. And unfortunately, it's how the system is built. And then they've built like these almost like gates around it so that you kind of stay contained.
Mm-hmm. And the way I've looked at it is, again, how we talked about how the mind is a default mode. It's almost certain systems are just designed to allow you to suffer. And the question is if you can figure out that the system you're in is a suffer trap, can you get out?
Right.
And it starts with this, but then it also moves into action.
Definitely. And also even with the network that you have around you, right? If you've got lots of negative people, guess what's going to happen to your energy, no matter how much you try to keep it positive, right? So even from that end, I did like a full network cleanse. I kind of practice this every couple of years just to see, is this person today bringing positivity into my life? Is this someone that I need energy-wise around me? If not, cut. It's wonderful. You did great things for me 20 years ago, but if you're not kind of in my world to inspire me to be my best today, then why are you here?
Well, Sanjay, I want you to know that you are one of those people in my life that charge me up, that bring me inspiration and positivity. I definitely don't say it enough, but you're an inspiration to me. Thank you for your friendship over the years and for sharing your story. And for this podcast, thank you for getting your message out to help others.
You're most welcome, Matt. And I hope the best for everyone, that, that light bulb turns on for them and they decide to take their lives back too.
Thanks, brother. Take care.
Take care, Matt.
Thanks for joining us. Hope and Health is made possible through generous donations. To learn more or support the show, visit mshope.com, where you'll find free science-based resources.